Hello interwebs, welcome to No Posts on Sundays. This computer came in and it doesn't post. So let's take a look at it. I will just turn it around and shove it under the camera. Right, we need power, we need HDMI, and I need a keyboard and mouse. And let's see what this thing does. I don't know if this has been rebuilt or if it was an existing computer. I don't recall the customer giving me much information. Wow, those are some gnarly screws in the power supply. Huh. Alright, power. Alright, so it powers on. We don't have a beep speaker or anything, so I'm paying attention to the CPU fan, because if we see the fan changing speeds, that's a giveaway that something is happening. This motherboard is, I think this is a B450 DS3H, unless I'm mistaken. And it doesn't have any diagnostic LEDs or anything like that, so we don't get any kind of visual cues to help us out straight off the bat. The other thing I'm noticing as well is that the graphics card fans are not, they've come on, but they've not immediately turned off. The vast majority of any vaguely modern graphics card will have start-stop fans that will just almost instantly turn off on a cold start like this. So that also kind of indicates that it's not doing anything. And yeah, there's no change in speed of the CPU fan, no signs that the motherboard is progressing through post and the CPU is warming up and setting its fan speed or anything like that. Yeah, no signs of life at all. Alright. There's the problem, folks. I'm going to roll the intro, and we'll take a closer look at this thing. So first of all, I'm just looking for any visual problems with the build, and I'm not seeing anything. All the cables are in properly. These noodly wires are in properly. The other front panel connectors are going to the right place, and those are in properly. The RAM is in correctly. I'll just shut those other latches just so you can see the nice straight lines there, because I like to shut them because then you can see all of the latches are shut and it's in correctly. CPU fan isn't falling out. You've got a cable tie there that's kind of just hanging around, but I don't think that's been leaning against anything. I shouldn't really use cable ties like this just because they have got a bit of wire in them, and just if they come loose that could fall against the motherboard and stuff like that. When it's tied up around the back, then you know that's probably not going to happen, but this one is obviously in a stage where, you know, like that could fall into something, so you know that's worth thinking about. Other than that, I don't see a lot wrong, so I'm going to take the graphics card out and we're just going to do a BIOS reset on this. So as per the norm, there's a lot of ways of doing a BIOS reset. We've got a clear CMOS jumper down here, and that's the official way of doing it. So I could jam a screwdriver into that. However, my preferred method is always to take out the BIOS battery, or the CMOS battery, or the RTC battery, whatever you want to call it. They're all technically correct in some form or another. So I'm going to pop this guy out. What are you? You're a 1660 Ti. So we're going to pop this guy out, and as soon as you remove this battery, a 3.3 volt signal that goes from the battery into the PCH goes low, and this tells the PCH to reset the BIOS on the next boot up. That's all it does. The battery doesn't power anything, it just holds a signal line high. So that's it. So shorting this jumper, that also pulls that signal low. So it does the same thing, but taking the battery out is much more definitive because there is now no power to hold that signal high. And while the battery is out, it's also a good opportunity for me to check that the battery isn't flat, because that can cause weird behavior. It's unusual for a flat battery to stop post from happening, but we do have a flat battery. 2.8 volts is basically, well, 2.88. That's functionally flat. And you might say, oh, 2.88, that's not low at all. It's a 3 volt nominal battery. Well, yeah, kind of. The battery is 3-volt nominal, however, they are 3.2-ish at when they come out the box, and they're powering a signal that is logic 3.3 volts-ish. And the signal is coming from the battery, and it's going through a diode before it gets there, so it loses some voltage before it gets there. So at 2.8-ish volts, going through a diode as well, you're going to lose another sort of 0.25 there. So it's down to more like 2.5 by the time it gets to the PCH. And at that point, for a logic 3.3 volt signal, you're getting into pretty murky territory there. So that could be causing issues. In any case, I'm going to replace it. So I'll put in a fresh battery. And let's turn this thing back on, same configuration, and see if anything has changed. I've just plugged in a beep speaker as well, just in case it gives us any beeps. Right. Nope, that's not doing a whole lot of anything. There's still, again, the fact that I'm not seeing any change in fan speed, like that kind of like fan control initialization, that tends to happen fairly early in post. You know, that's low-level hardware stuff on the motherboard switching on. So when you're not seeing any kind of reaction like that, that generally means you're kind of getting nowhere. So a lot of people would next be thinking about RAM and that kind of thing. I don't think we're getting as far as RAM right now. I'm going to pop the RAM out and just see if anything changes. But I think I'm probably going to go straight to reseating the CPU here. Because if this motherboard had diagnostic LEDs, I would bet money that it would be stuck on the CPU light. So let's try it with no RAM in. We should get a RAM error beep. And nope, we get nothing. All right. I'm going to... could be the power supply. Let's quickly change out the power supply first, and then we'll do the CPU. Corsair CX 550 power supply, so should be a half-decent power supply. Of course, make and model is never a guarantee. Just because you've got a decent power supply doesn't mean it can't fail. You know, I've had this before when I've been walking someone through diagnostics over a chat. You know, I've been like, oh, you know, have you tried a different power supply? And they're like, I've got an XYZ power supply. It can't be that. And I'm like, well, yeah, it can. I don't care if you've got a Seasonic 1500 watt power supply. It can still be faulty. So yeah, it's just maybe less likely to be that, but it doesn't matter how good the thing is, it can still fail. So we will entertain that idea. And the CX is not exactly a super prestigious line of power supplies. The other thing this is going to do as well is we're going to eliminate anything that's plugged in around the back of the computer. So if the power supply is being upset by fan controllers or anything like that, I can see something is plugged in on a SATA port there. So we're cutting out some of the other stuff that is plugged into the PC. So if this works, we would then need to check in on that and such. So we're starting to work our way toward a bare boot now. Right, power and power. At this point, I would expect the fan to have changed speed. So like, you know, a couple of seconds in, I would expect to see the fan speed up and then slow down or something. Nope. I've no reason to believe that's going to do anything right now. I'm going to take out the graphics card and the SSD. Changing two things at once here, but I'm gonna very rapidly start crashing down to a bare boot. I've still got the CPU on my mind right now. Like, that's kind of my expectation. I think this is going to have an APU in it, like a 2400G or a 3400G or a 3200G or something like that. Yes, the motherboard is a B450M DS3H. I like this motherboard. This was banging value for money for its period. So yeah, I generally find them to be pretty reliable. All right. I'll plug the HDMI into the motherboard. However, we don't know what CPU is in here yet, so we don't know if it can actually output anything. But we're going to know if it's doing stuff because we'll get a beep from the beep speaker and we'll see that fan doing stuff. All right, I'll take the motherboard out because, like, we're most of the way there anyway. I keep saying I think it's the CPU and then doing something else, but we're kind of just slowly taking this thing apart, so whatever. The reason why I talk about it being a 2400G or a 3400G or something along those lines is that those AMD APUs seem to be specifically vulnerable to core degradation. Yeah, that's that whole thing of it's never the CPU unless it is. AMD core degradation is very real, and that is a method by which it very much can be the CPU. And we've seen it be that a couple of times on this channel, and I've seen it just in friends' computers elsewhere before. It's normally accompanied by other issues. Normally you still get post, you just get unstable performance. But that's what my gut feeling is anyway. Right, let's have a quick look at the back of the motherboard to make sure there's no craters on it. No, it's pretty clean. Nothing to report. So another try out of the case, then we're going to reseat the CPU. I'm not expecting to get anything from it right now, but we'll try. Often when you're dealing with a no post, I often recommend waiting for like a good 60 seconds at some point, just in case it's having a long post. And I haven't done that this time, but again, the fan speed tells you an awful lot. I will give it time when it's obvious that it's trying to do something. If it's power cycling, or the fan is changing speed, or there's some other signs of life that it's running through a routine, it's trying to do something, then I will give it time. But in its current condition, it doesn't look like it's doing anything at all to me. I've no reason to believe it's actually doing stuff. So let's pull this cooler off and see what we find. We find a decent smattering of paste. That's a Ryzen 4500. Okay. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to pull that out. Make sure none of the pins have fallen off. But yeah, that looks fine. Right, I'm going to grab another CPU. I've got a 3400G on the bench here. So we'll chuck this guy in. And if we get some life out of this, we'll swap the customer CPU back in again. If you don't have a spare CPU to test with, just taking the CPU out and putting it back in again will still do something. The board tends to notice that. I've asked this before, and I think I've had an answer before, but I believe there is some mechanism by which the PCH knows when the CPU has been taken out, and thus that causes a change of state, so to speak. Right, I'm just going to keep the cooler to one hand for a sec, because I want to check if the chip warms up, because that will tell me if we've got CPU vCore or not. So let's turn the power on and short the power pins. So we've got fan spin there. Right, it power cycled, and there is some warmth in the chip, so I'm going to just sit that on. I posted. Okay. I'm going to turn that off because I'm not confident about getting that cooler into position in time. However, the chip was warming up. You saw that the fan changed. It power cycled. Then it turned on, and we got a post beep. So just straight away, we got a reaction. So we're getting somewhere now. I'm going to put the customer CPU back in. Right, that's not screwed on, however, it's sitting on top of the chip, so it actually has some cooling. Let's try that again. Yeah, I think the customer's CPU is stone dead. All right. Right. What I'll do now, I'll put my test CPU back in, and I'm going to give it enough to actually start up and give a picture. So, all right, test boot with an SSD and the graphics card. So we should get a picture and a boot into Windows now. Notice the fan speed changing. So even though we haven't had a beep or any diagnostic lights, this is how we know that it's doing something. There we go, and there's our post beep. Right, I'm just going to save and exit. Don't really care what the BIOS settings are right now, I just want it to boot up. It's not seeing my SSD. I'll try another SSD, and if this doesn't work, then I might have to get another CPU just to confirm that the motherboard is actually okay. That will vex me greatly. Although it's worth noting that I have a spare motherboard, so I should test the customer's CPU in another motherboard anyway, just to see if we're getting punked by some kind of oddity. There we go, that's booting up. Okay. There we go, it works. Alright, I'll get another motherboard. We'll plug the customer's CPU into another motherboard just to confirm that that is also dead. Right, let's do a quick post test just to make sure this platform works. How about that? Nope, how about that? There it is. Right, so this is the customer's graphics card, which I haven't plugged the power into because I'm a genius. And this is my CPU, RAM, and motherboard. So we'll just quickly fire this up and just confirm that it works first of all. Oh, there we go. Cool. All right, that works. We turn off. We pull out my CPU and we put in the customer's CPU. We power on and we turn on. Ah. Now that's interesting. It posted with the customer's CPU. There's our Ryzen 4500. Right, what voltage is that looking for right now? Right, 1.42. Yeah, these things kind of sit high. I'm going to grab mem test. So the way to spot a degraded core is that the CPU will not idle properly. I'm going to get it to do memory testing, which is the opposite of idling. However, I want to just check that the CPU is working first. So we're just going to check that it can actually like do stuff, and then we'll see if it can idle. Alright, so that gives it something to do. I'm going to leave it running this for a bit of time. Let everything warm up and just make sure that it doesn't just spit out a bunch of errors at me. Also, I want to get some food and stuff. So I'll be back in a bit, guys. We'll let this get 15 or 20 minutes into it and just make sure it doesn't freak out. Right, this had about 15-20 minutes to run now, and it hasn't spat out errors everywhere, so it's obviously not cataclysmically broken. I guess what I'll do now is I'll take the CPU back out and I'll put it back in the customer's motherboard, and we'll do further testing with that. Maybe we try swapping the memory kits around and that kind of thing, see if we can find whatever gremlin is lurking here. Yeah. Okay, right. Let's see if we can get the customer's CPU to work in their motherboard. That's not it either. This one. Right, I'm kind of perplexed because I was expecting the customer's CPU to be dead, and that would be the end of this video. And now it's 7:10 in the evening, and I'm still here. So let's see if we can figure this one out. So first of all, let's just put everything back in again. This configuration did not work the last time we tested it, so I'm expecting it to not work now, but let's just make sure that's still the case. And then I guess I'll try it with some different memory. And yeah, we'll just try changing some stuff around, see if we can coax it into working. Oh, you know what? I'm an idiot. This is a B450M motherboard. What are the chances... No, I was about to say, what are the chances that it needs a BIOS update? But the 5700G booted. No, it didn't. The 5700G worked in my one. This just needs a BIOS update. I don't believe. Let's put a new BIOS on it. Let's put a new BIOS on it. What an idiot. What an idiot. Oh well. I can already think of an absolutely cracking clickbait title for this video. So we'll do that. Alright. Cool. Let's get a BIOS. This is a revision 1.0. Support. BIOS. Latest BIOS will do. This computer doesn't look like a new build, so it just didn't occur to me that this might be it. But it's probably a existing build that's just had some new parts put into it. Like the RAM looks new. Maybe the CPU is new, you know. So I just the thought hadn't occurred to me, but now it seems so obvious, you know. All right, power on. It's posting. I'm going to spam the delete key to go into BIOS, and we'll update the BIOS, and then we swap in the customer CPU again. All right, so this is with some... Right, let's find the update for this one. It's an older board, this. I think we need to do a hotkey for this. There's Q flash in the bottom right. Give me that. Okay. Right, we're on BIOS version F41, which is 2019. That's a pretty early BIOS. So yeah, that'll explain it. All right, update the BIOS. We're going up to F67. Begin. if we didn't have another CPU to work with here, we could reprogram the BIOS chip via external means. And I'm planning to do a video that shows some more detail on how to do that. But I've not made that video quite yet, although I do have the stuff for it. So it's coming soon, TM. I've got a couple of new BIOS programmers to show off, fancy ones and unfancy ones. And I've also got some pogo pin cables for doing it in circuit, which is a method that I am vocally against. I dislike in circuit flashing a lot, but I want to show how to do it because it is a viable option for a DIYer. So we're going to have a look into that. Anyway, I'll see you guys after this update progress bar. We did it, Reddit. We're now on BIOS version F67. So now if we shove in this Ryzen 4500, it'll probably work. So let's power this off. Whoop. Can't believe I got punked by this thing. I should have known. I'd say I buried the lead on this because if you knew that the computer had just been rebuilt, it would be really obvious to check hardware compatibility. But I guess I hid this information from myself, so I buried the lead on myself. You played yourself. Hey, look at that, it's doing stuff. New CPU installed. All right, wow. Let's put this thing back together again. Okay, right, we've booted up and we've landed on this screen here that says reboot and select proper boot device. This is the CSM boot screen. So I'm going to reboot and drop into BIOS and I'm going to put it into UEFI boot and we'll see if we've got a UEFI install of Windows. However, this SSD looks very new as well, so there's a good chance that that there's nothing on the SSD and it just hasn't had Windows installed on it. But this is also as good of an opportunity as ever to make sure the rest of the system is set up as well. So we'll drop into advanced memory settings and we're going to turn on XMP. So we've got some 3200 RAM here. That's not super spicy, 3200 CL16. There should be no issues just going directly onto that, so we'll enable that. The time and date doesn't matter, Windows will set that. There is our boot option, and we want to say UEFI only. CSM support disabled. And secure boot we want to be enabled. Good. And that should mean that we are Windows 11 eligible. So that should make sure that this thing will start to Windows 11 no problem. Which I think a 4500 will. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, it will. Failing that, you can install 11 on anything technically. So whatever. Let's see. Yeah, FTPM is enabled. That's the other thing we need for 11. Good. Yeah, a little bit weird. We should have had... CSM should have been off by default for Windows 11 compatibility, but for some reason or other it wasn't. Oh, we'll have rebar as well. Thank you. Yeah, cool. All right, that all looks good. Right, and if this cycles around into the BIOS config on its own, then that means that the SSD is empty. Yeah, the SSD is blank. This needs a Windows installation on it. Good. All right. I will probably leave that to the customer, or at the very least I will call the customer and ask them if they want me to do that. That will cost them extra, though, because, yeah, they can carry on setting this computer up. But if they want a Windows install, I will charge more for that, because that means service time. Good. Right, thank you everyone for tuning in. That one took a slightly unexpected twist. As I mentioned, kind of buried the lead on myself for this one. But hey, you never know. If you just built a system, well, the customer had just reassembled this computer and had clearly fallen into this trap where it hadn't occurred to them that the motherboard would need a BIOS update. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye.